guys, I'm Billy Spectre, and thanks so much for watching. We're finally here for a review of the V2 OZ9. Very excited to be talking to you guys about these guns today. I've had a lot of experience with these now. I've got about 13,000 rounds through these guns, and so I finally feel like I'm in a place where I can give you guys a really solid review. Let's start off with the transparency moment. I've been shooting Zevs for a very long time. Obviously, I do have a relationship with Zev. Pretty much all the guns I'm going to show you today are guns that Zev sent me. With that said, they never even asked me to do a review of any kind. I am in no way obligated. And, you know, with Zev, kind of the way that I do any kind of sponsorships or company relationships is I don't entertain any talks with that company unless I'm already using their parts and believe in that gun. So here's a gun they did not send me in any way, shape, or form. This is one of my first guns that I ever ran. It's just actually a Polymer 80 lower that's running a full Zev upper. And that's kind of what Zev was known for back in the day, right? Was Glock parts, and they made a lot of really good stuff. Zev comp on here, just all the different things, right? And so I ran a lot of Zev stuff over the years, and so when I had an opportunity to work with them, I obviously jumped at it and did a lot of testing on the Gen 1 OZ9s. And this is one of the reasons that I really want to make this video. Because I think not only do I get a lot of questions about like, hey, why do you run Zev? What's different about an OZ9 versus something like a Glock? What's different about the V2s versus the V1s? But there's a lot of misconceptions, I think, out there about the guns. So what I'll say first and foremost about the Gen 1 guns, right? Guns like this one, as an example. I think that like any gun, when it comes off the line, there was some problems, for sure. Frankly, I think there's still maybe a couple problems that we'll get to. But this is a really good gun, and I'm going to kind of walk you through what it is, first of all, and then we'll talk about pros and cons and why I choose to run these guns. I'll tell you right now that, you know, I'm a full-time firearms instructor and professional shooter and in competition, that sort of thing. Just getting free guns from a company would not be nearly enough incentive for me to run those guns if I didn't believe in them, if I didn't like them, and if they were not my choice to run. I can buy my own guns if I need to, right? But these are my choice, and I will tell you why. So at first glance, the OZ9 looks a whole lot like a Glock. It looks kind of like a Gucci Glock. You may think of things like shadow systems, stuff like that. However, nothing really could be further from the truth, and I'll tell you why. So off the top, right, is essentially a Glock-compatible slide. Now, it's a good slide, right? We've got excellent slide serrations. The overall reciprocating mass of the slide is lessened, which I like. We've got one of the best match-grade barrels that you can put in your Glock on the market. Lots of upgraded internals, things like you know, a good recoil spring setup, you know, all the things. It also comes with, in my opinion, the patented Zev slide cut is the best slide cut that's available on the market. I don't think I have one that's actually naked right now, but there's two posts in here, with kind of recoil bosses, if you will, that actually come up through the holes in the optic, and then the screw goes through that. So what that means is that so far, like back when I had RMRs and that kind of thing, and I would have to, you know, take the optic on and off the gun every time you wanted to change batteries or whatever, my zero was always perfect when putting that optic back on the gun, which I can't say for, you know, an MOS or any of those kind of things, because the fit is just so dang consistent, and those posts, those recoil bosses, are basically taking all of the back and forth momentum of the gun's cycling, and it's taking it off of the screw. Additionally, it gives you way more threads of contact with a smaller diameter screw. I won't dive into the engineering, if you will, of all that, but a smaller screw actually takes way less torque to stay locked in place. And in this case, you get way more thread contact as well. So I've pretty much never had a screw back out on a Zev optic cut, which is a huge benefit in my mind. So you have a great upper, right? But the magic of the OZ9 actually is in the lower half, which is essentially two pieces. And this is what people, I think, have the misconception about and don't understand about the OZ9. So first of all, you have this, all right? This is a full steel chassis that holds all of the operating components of the gun. There's a couple really cool things about this. Number one, this is steel. It is heavy. It does add some weight to the gun, and more specifically, it shifts the weight in the gun, because obviously, you know, again, the slide here has been lightened, so there's weight taken out of the reciprocating mass of the gun shifted into the lower half of the gun, the balance is improved, all that sort of thing. You have now, instead of the weird Glock polymer, you know, proprietary rail, you've got a full steel pick rail on the gun. You've also got rails that are way bigger than Glock's rails. Of course, it takes out all of that polymer flex you would normally get from a polymer striker fired gun. Maintenance now is super easy with this, and it gives you interchangeable grip modules. So as an example, if you wanted to swap from, let's say, a grip that you might use for competition, something that's like full-sized and stippled, and maybe, you know, I don't have a magwell on this one because I'm not allowed to use that in carry optics, and say I want to switch to something like this, right? That's a compact grip with a small magwell on it. Maybe I would want to, you know, carry something like that. It is literally as simple as dropping one pin out of the gun, and you can immediately drop and swap those grip modules. And additionally, those are really affordable. And these grip modules are like 50, 60 bucks a piece when you're swapping back and forth, so you can get whatever you want. Even if it's something as trivial as, you know, changing colors or something, you want gray or tan or black or whatever they offer, that's really easy to do. So it's a really simple process. You'll see here on the gun above the trigger guard is just one pin, and that's all you have to do to drop it. So if I just grab a hollow sun tool here and I just punch that one single pin out, you'll see that the grip simply pivots right off the gun like so. I can take my new grip module, slide it right on the gun, and I can drop my pin back in place. And we now have a, you know, basically a Glock 19 size grip on a Glock 34 size gun, and that's pretty dang cool, right? So essentially you're getting a match grade Glock, if you will, a Glock with all the kind of upgrades you would normally put in a gun, a match grade trigger, all the upgrades you would normally want to put in a striker fired pistol, you know, an upgraded trigger, extended controls, all the things you would want, slide cuts, so on and so forth. But then you also get interchangeable grip modules and a full steel chassis that improves weight and balance, takes the flex out of it, makes it operate a lot smoother, and lets you swap out those grip modules. So that's kind of a basic rundown on the guns. So cons, right? Price. Obviously a gun like this is going to be significantly more expensive than something like an off-the-shelf Glock. However, typically I think if you find these in store or you find a discount or whatever the case may be, you're probably realistically going to be paying somewhere around 1,500 bucks for an OZ9. However, if you were to take a stock Glock and you were to do the things that you have to do to the gun to get them operational. So, you know, if you're gonna do an optic cut, or if you're gonna buy a plate or whatever it is, if you wanna put an upgraded barrel in there or something like that, if you want to get upgraded texturing on the grip, if you wanna, you know, put an undercut on the trigger guard, that sort of thing, if you wanna put an actual decent trigger in there, so on and so forth, by the time you do all that stuff, your price point is actually gonna be pretty dang similar. And you're still not going to have all the same benefits. You're not going to have the steel chassis that's going to improve the weight and balance and takes the flex out. You're not going to have interchangeable grip modules, so on and so forth. So when people ask me, hey, is the gun worth it? It's like, well, I can't tell you how much something is worth it to you. But if you want all of those things along with reliability of a Glock and Glock magazines, the ability to get a bunch of magazines really inexpensively, and all the aftermarket support and so on and so forth, then to me, yes, it absolutely is worth it to me. Whether that's worth it to you or not, obviously, is up to you. Let's talk about reliability while we're on that subject. Again, I think that there's some misconceptions in this regard. I think there was obviously some issues with the very initial ones that were off the line. There may be still one or two issues that I'll talk to you about. This gun right here, this is my practice gun, the one that I shoot in classes, so on and so forth. Just broke 12,000 rounds on this pistol. It has ran extremely well. I saw zero issues with this gun whatsoever until 9,000 rounds, and I got a little bit worried because I started seeing extraction issues, which we used to see, I think, a little bit more often in the Gen 1s. And I was like, man, is this still an issue that we haven't worked out? Because I thought we had it fixed. Turns out, The maintenance schedule on an OZ9 is just a little bit more aggressive than I was anticipating. So the V2 OZ9s, the maintenance schedule on these is 9,000 rounds for basically all the springs. So as soon as I changed out the extractor depressor spring, all the problems went away, 100%. Went ahead and changed out, as they recommend, the Zev's Pro striker spring and the recoil spring assembly as well, and also the trigger return spring. And we're up and at it, right? Good to go. So just keep that in mind. 9,000 rounds is the maintenance schedule for the V2 OZ9. I did see one more issue at like 11,200 rounds, and this one's a little bit disappointing. It was another broken striker, right? Now I think that is potentially the longest that one of the Zev, stock strikers has actually ran for me. So that's a good improvement. They've made multiple steps over the last few years to improve the reliability, the rigidity, and the ruggedness of those strikers, and I think that the current generation are the best ones that we have. However, that is a catastrophic failure, obviously, and the trouble with the striker reliability is that realistically dry fire is harder on those than even live fire is, and so it's kind of really hard to keep track of the number of cycles a striker has on it, and kind of anticipate when you should be replacing those to avoid problems. Now, this is not an issue that's completely unique to Zev. I've seen a lot of strikers break. I personally have broken Glock OEM strikers as well in other guns. I think that if you dry fire a lot, it's a matter of when more than if something like that is probably going to happen to you. However, that's sooner than I would like to see one breaking for sure. So I'm going to continue testing the Zev strikers, and we'll see if they could keep kind of breaking in that sort of expected round count or not. We'll see. If that's something that worries you, it's a very easy fix just to swap that out for an OEM Glock striker, which is what I have done for right now in my match gun. So this is not a Zev striker that's in here right now. It's a Glock striker. Easy one-for-one swap. It's ran 100% with no issues since I made that swap. So that is something to be aware of. The other part that is still concerning to me is the slide stops. If you're not aware, Zev for years and years, here's my match chassis, has been running this slide stop. This is what it looks like. This is the Vickers / Tango Down Glock compatible slide stop. And it works really well. It does. And the thing is, it fits the stock grip modules perfectly, and nothing else really does. However, I have never had one of those make it past 6,000 rounds for me. That seems to be like the magic round count. So I always recommend people to swap that part out as well when you get your OZ9s out of the box. So this is just a Glock OEM slide stop. What you may be able to kind of see on here is that I have to notch out this grip module a little bit further to where it actually accepts that bigger slide stop. This is what a stock grip module looks like, and you can see it's a much smaller notch that does not accept, you can actually see it a lot better on this one, does not accept the bigger slide stops. You can see I've notched out just this area right here a little bit. On the grip module, you can literally use a razor blade to do that. You don't need anything crazy. So that's unfortunate as well. With that said, Zev has just come out, I don't even have one yet, with an upgraded version of the Tango Down or Tango 6 or whatever, the Vickers slide stop. It's basically the same thing, but it's made out of a heavier duty material, which we are very much hoping is going to solve that problem as well. So hopefully that's done. As of right now, those are the two issues that I would be aware of on the current gen OZ9. Almost every gun I'm aware of has some kind of an issue, some kind of modification people do to it to get it working well. The OZ9 is absolutely no exception, and this is only the second generation of the gun. I'm very hopeful these issues are going to be worked out ASAP, and we'll have essentially a perfect gun. But for right now, those are the two things that I would be aware of. There are a couple other very small modifications that I do to these grip modules to get them working exactly the way that I like, and I will describe those to you now. The first thing is the beaver tail. So here is a factory grip versus one of mine that I've worked on. You can obviously just see that the beaver tail here on the back of this grip sticks north a little bit farther than I prefer, but it's very easy to cut this material down, sand it down, and get you basically, this is not great work here obviously, but a rounded down grip module that allows, that it's way more comfortable. You know, if you do grab the gun in kind of a claw grip, either from IWB or OWB in my case, that just makes it easier to get around that beaver tail, so I prefer to grind that down. The other thing that's interesting, on the inside of a stock grip module, inside the magwell, are these two spines, and you can kind of see they form a little bit of a shelf there. Now this works out super well when you're using a magwell, because those two spines are designed to interface directly with the magwell, and it guides the magazine in very nicely. However, when you're not using a magwell, either because you don't want them to print for IWB concealment, or if they're using it for competition, it is super easy for the magazine to catch on those two spines and cause an issue, right? So what I do is I basically ramp those two spines down. So here is, hopefully you can kind of see, this isn't gonna be, you know, perfect by any means, but here's the inside of my grip. You can see I've just ramped those two spines down. And what that does in a really incredible way is it expands the opening forward and backwards, and really, I think, creates one of the most easily reloadable magwells of any carry optics gun, we'll say, on the market. Obviously, the Gen 5 Glocks are fairly forgiving, but they still have this issue. Here's a stock Glock magwell. You see this half moon cut. That is an absolutely atrocious design that makes reloading very, very tricky, because even more so than the Zev spines, like your mags just get stuck on that half moon thing just constantly, and it causes all kinds of issues. So you may think, well, you could ramp that down the same way I do with the Zev, and point of fact, you can't, because there's no material behind there. You're just cutting a hole. There's nothing to ramp, right? So the solve for Glocks is some kind of an aftermarket plug that you put in there like that. This is the C&H speed feed, and I have found that it certainly helps solve the issue. This is still not nearly as easy to reload as my OZ9s. One of the things that I have found, and I developed this habit without even realizing it, and it's basically an OZ9 specific technique, is I don't perfectly match up the angle of my magazine with the gun, because exactly what just happened there can happen. I actually sort of, if this is the perfect angle for the mag to go in, I almost approach the magazine to the gun with a little bit of this angle, right? Because I just have such a big hole here to hit that it just sort of redirects that magazine perfectly into the gun and makes reloading it just super, super easy. If you have that attitude on the magazine at all with this C&H speed feed, it will still jam every single time. And realistically, when you hit that, there's a little bit of a ramp here in the very center, but the corners of it still come out and are flat. So unless you hit that speed feed exactly perfectly, if you're a little bit too far to the rear, it really does nothing to push the magazine forward and redirect it into the magwell. It's definitely, I prefer to have this for sure over just the naked Glock half moon cut, but man, the OZ9 is just so much easier to reload. So I actually like that, even though it's a modification that I kind of have to do to the gun. Once it's done, it is, oh my word, so much easier to reload. And then the last thing that I do in terms of modifications, like we just talked about, is I notch out that space by the slide catch in a way that allows me to put whatever slide catch in there I want. And that's it. Other than that, this is quite literally a 100% stock gun with an OEM Glock slide stop and an OEM striker in there. Those are the only modifications that I've done to it in terms of parts. Everything else on this is exactly the way that it comes from the factory, which is really, really nice. Unless you're a super high volume shooter, you don't even need to worry about those two parts. You can just run it stock right out of the box, which is pretty cool. So all in all, basically you get a gun that to me has a lot of the same reliability features that you would find from a Glock. It has all the same safety features in terms of an actual trigger safety, an actual firing pin block safety, the cruciform setup, all of that is maintained exactly like you would find on a factory Glock, which I like a lot. It gives me peace of mind when I'm shoving something like this in my pants. The striker is not held to the rear. This is as safe as you can get in terms of a cocked and locked gun, which is really, really nice. So you get you inherit some of that stuff from the Glock, but you get all the things that you want from a gun. One that's really nice, has really nice balance, it's accurate, it has great cocking serrations, it has best-in-class optic cut, in my personal opinion. It has a fantastic trigger. I've tried about every Glock trigger on the market. I keep coming back to the Zevs. I really do enjoy them quite a lot. The interchangeable grip modules, lots of cool features that you really can't find in one place anywhere else on the market. And that's why I shoot these Zevs. And these Zevs have done very, very well for me. That's what I won the Build-A-Row competition with last year. It's what I just shot in Optics Nationals. It's what I shoot full time. And I'm a big, big fan of these guns, particularly this new V2 iteration of the OZ9. So hopefully that has answered a bunch of your guys' questions about this gun, what it is, how it works, and why I shoot one. If you have any more questions, please feel free to drop those down below. I will do my very best to get to them. And that's what I've got for you. Until next time, thanks for watching.